Unless you've been hiding out under a rock, you probably know all about the new GDI and Sprint sub-factions. We've even posted some of the new units. But you want more. Oh, you greedy CNC fan. You always want more. In a few moments, one of the story creators behind Kane's Wrath will be joining us to talk about the rich fiction of the Global Defense Initiative's new sub-factions. Later on, we will show you some of GDI's new powers and upgrades. And if you haven't been naughty, we might just let you in on a little secret: the GDI Epic Unit. But first, Raj, give us a little background.
The Steel Talons vigilantly watch for a successor to Kane, preparing for that time by researching experimental combat technology. The Steel Talons are ruthless and efficient on the battlefield, and believe that they can and should outgun any foe. Zocom, Zone Operations Command, is a GDI task force assigned to reclaim high Tiberium areas. While most soldiers cannot endure significant Tiberium exposure, Zocom are battle-hardy and have Tiberium-resistant armor. They use this and more advanced sonic weaponry to their tactical advantage. To learn more about the Steel Talons and Zocom and the story behind them, David's talking with a special guest.
That's right. Once again, it's my privilege and honor to be joined by Kane's Wrath lead designer and co-author, Sam Bass. Sam, welcome back to Battlecast PrimeTime. You've already survived the firing squad once, but we want another shot at you.
Bring it on, David.
Kane's Wrath takes place before, during, and after the events of Command & Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars, and includes 2 new GDI sub-factions complete with advanced hover technology and Tiberium research. Without that kind of new advancements, how are you making sure you're not contradicting the events of Command & Conquer 3 in the fiction?
We put a lot of thought into that, David, because we really didn't want to contradict existing canon. We really wanted to support it. For instance, the GDI Steel Talons sub-faction are a bridge between the technology and combat philosophy of Tiberian Sun and Firestorm and the world of CnC3. So they have some bridge units. They have units like the Behemoth, which is sort of a precursor to the Juggernaut. They have units like the Titan and the Wolverine, which existed in the world of Tiberian Sun. And then Zocom exist in parallel with the world of CnC3. And thus they have CnC3 core units that have been modified to suit their particular fiction and backstory, and some new units, such as the Zocom Zone Shatterer, which is a spin on the GDI Shatterer unit with some particularly Zocom technology.
Okay, now you mentioned Zocom having more heavy armor and stuff like that. Why is that?
Well, Zocom designed around the idea of Tiberium abatement. They were initiated by the GDI Council to abate Tiberium in the red zones and start reclaiming the Earth. So yes, they're very heavily armored because they have to exist in almost alien hostile conditions. They have weapons designed around sonic technology because sonic technology is pretty much the only way to abate Tiberium. So they have things like the Zone Shatterer I previously mentioned. And they also have units like our new Zone Raider, which is a female, heavily armored elite infantry unit with a sonic grenade weapon. Makes it extremely dangerous in combat and a very useful anti-Tiberium unit.
So now what kind of, Command & Conquer player would choose to play as Zocom?
Well, Zocom is not conducive to rush play because they're very high risk, high reward. You really have to plan out your battle groups. You really have to think about your unit combinations and build order. So you're not going to rush in the early game, but once you have a good army put together, you've really thought about your unit combinations, you can get in there and use some of these high risk, high reward attacks. So you can steamroll an opponent in the mid game, but in the early game you really have to turtle up and get to that power.
So it sounds like Zocom is more of a tanking turtle faction. Does that mean Steel Talon is a rushing faction?
Those Steel Talons are definitely more conducive to rushing. They have some really powerful early game vehicle units, some pretty good early game infantry and upgrades. And so yeah, you can't just rush with them and win, but they're definitely more conducive to rush play.
And where exactly does Steel Talons fit in sort of the before, during, and after CnC timeline?
They're somewhere between the world of Tiberian Sun and the world of Command & Conquer 3. And fictionally, they're kind of the DARPA of the Command & Conquer world. They're designed around experimental technology, new ways to fight in the battlefield, customization. A lot of their units have a garrisonable, so you can put different infantry units in there and really change the way they fight. And they have things like the Titan and the Wolverine, which are very old school, but still quite valuable in exchange for things like the Predator tank, which hadn't been developed at the time that GDI were active in the post-Tiberian world, Tiberian Sun world.
So it's kind of a Command & Conquer 2.5 faction, if you will.
Yes, very much so.
Sam Bass, once again, you've dodged a bullet. Thanks for coming back on the show.
It's a pleasure, David.